What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Punk Rock Radar. Today, we are flipping things a little bit. We're going to be very negative. There is no positivity allowed on this episode. We're going to be talking our least favorite albums by our favorite bands. We each picked three. I'm joined by Lewis and from DyingScene.com, Dylan, aka Screeching Bottle Rocket. And Dylan, I'm going to let you walk us through your first album. Go ahead, tell us the band, the album, and why you hate it.
All right. Very legendary band, held in very high regard, Bad Religion. I don't think they have any albums I really hate, but the one I have the strongest negative feelings toward is their most recent album, Age of Unreason. This album came out right before... it came out about a year before the pandemic, but I listened to it the most during the pandemic, and I was kind of in a bad mood, and this album just kind of put me in a worse mood. Because I had such high hopes for it after what was the last record called? It was
True North.
True North. So True North was pretty good, and I was like, man, hopefully they can top that record. And then I heard some of the singles. I think the first one they did was Chaos From Within. I was like, shit, man, this is pretty decent. It's all right. It's not True North, but it's all right. And then Paranoid Style, another good single. Pretty good. I have high hopes. And then I hear the record. It's dog shit. My Sanity, real boring. Big Black Dog, one of the worst Bad Religion songs I could think of. There's a few gems in there. The singles... and probably The Approach and End of History. But I mean, just so much of the album is filler. It could have been an EP, really. So just a very unremarkable album. I think they could have held off for a few more years and got a few more good songs to tack on to the singles and stuff.
Yeah, Lewis, if I'm not mistaken, this album was in both of our D tier on the Bad Religion tier. For me, I think Candidate is the best song. I always thought that was catchy. Reminded me more of like Process of Belief era Bad Religion. But Lewis, Bad Religion is your all-time favorite band. Do you have anything redeeming about this, or do you want to keep piling the shit on?
No, I really dislike this record too. So this is I shared very much the same feelings. And I think that I don't know if I put True North in A or S, but I really love that record. I thought it was such a good album to come out for a band later in their career. And then this snooze fest comes out and I hated it. And it was so boring. And every time I tried to make myself like it because it's a Bad Religion record, you know, when you go through that lying to yourself thing, not much to like on this one, guys. So this would have been my pick as well for my least favorite record.
All right. Well, Lewis, what is your pick gonna be? Band and album?
Yeah. So maybe this is a contentious one because I know people do like this record, but my first one that I want to talk about is Indestructible by Rancid. And I know some people do like this album. I know that they got really popular. I think this was like a pretty big release. I would say that this album single-handedly made me lose interest in this band for many years. And just putting it in context, Rancid's previous 5 albums before this were incredible, right? Starting from the first one, self-titled, Let's Go. Then we go into Out Come the Wolves, which is a perennial, like one of the greatest ska punk records of all time. You have Life Won't Wait. That's just getting artsy and weird. And then the Balls to the Wall, Rancid 2000, which is probably still my favorite Rancid record. And then this thing comes out with such terrible songs, such as Arrested in Shanghai, and Tropical London.
I was gonna say that's gonna be the first one he shits on.
Yeah, I mean, Arrested in Shanghai is the worst song, one of the worst songs I've ever heard by any band. I'll be honest, like it is so bad that like those local shit bands that we used to play with, John, like any song they wrote is probably better than that song. I hate this album. I still hate it. I mean, and I even hate the radio singles that were popular. And, you know, I understand the guy's going through a divorce, but that doesn't give him a pass for putting out this piece of shit. So, yeah, my least favorite Rancid album by a band that I loved every record by previously. So I'll see if you guys have any softer thoughts on it, but I hate this album.
Yeah, it's funny. Like if you Arrested in Shanghai, like look at the play count from track 4 all the way through. Like it's pretty high up there. But yeah, this is not my least favorite Rancid album. I think that the subsequent ones are worse than this, but this is the biggest drop off in quality, I think, for sure. Like we were all let down by this album when it came out. Like there's a few decent songs. Like I think Spirit of 87 and Start Now are okay, but I mean, when there's 19 songs, there should be more than 2 standouts. And even then, like the ones that stand out don't have to be very good to stand out when there's songs this bad. But Dylan, what are your thoughts on this Rancid record?
Yeah, it's pretty unremarkable. Definitely their worst up to this point in their career. Arrested in Shanghai. I'm so glad he picked that one to target first, because I was gonna be like, let me guess, this is your least favorite. Yeah, Ghost Band is all right.
I was just gonna sneak in and say it because I saw it on the list. That song, I hate that song.
I hate
Really?
it too.
I think it's okay. It's
Ghost Band. Ghost Band.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, I think they were kind of running out of stuff to write about at this point, and it's just kind of contrived compared to like an album like And Out Come the Wolves that was so like novel. And I think at this point they were like trying to sound a lot more like the Clash, with the experimental stuff that started with Life Won't Wait. So this is kind of like almost like Life Won't Wait mixed with the second self-titled album, but like the B-sides from those two. It feels like it's just a bunch of like not very strong songs.
Yeah. And we will give them some credit though. The 2 singles they have for this new record are both sound good. So maybe Rancid is finally back after 23 years of being bad. But I'll move on to my first pick here. This was when we decided to do this episode. This was immediately the album that came to mind for me. This is Pennywise, The Fuse. This came out in 2005. This is probably at the peak of my Pennywise fandom. Like I thought they could do no wrong because like realistically, there's not much variation between Pennywise albums, and I was okay with that because they were all good. This doesn't sound radically different from the other Pennywise album. It's just that the song quality is just so flat and boring. Like I bought this the day it came out, and this is kind of like what Lewis was saying, like you're forcing yourself. I was like, this is Pennywise. Like I gotta be missing something here. And after sitting on this for 18 years, I got 2 songs pinned, and I probably still skip them when they come on the shuffle. It is just a complete dud of an album. I see the whole album as Pennywise The Fuse. Like unless Disappointment is combustible, then nothing exploded with this album. This is just, it sucks all around. Lewis, I feel like you have a similar sentiment to me that The Fuse was a big letdown coming off Land of the Free, From the Ashes. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I echo everything you just said, and I think we both had that same reaction of trying to pretend it was good. To me, it always felt like the antimatter to Straight Ahead for some reason.
Yeah, that's
because I think it's like similar lengths. Yeah, but like some similar diversity in the songs, but none of the songs really hit that well. And it just felt like phoned in. It felt like if they had taken a Pennywise greatest hits and done it. And to echo your point, like I always used to make the joke, like there's only a few things that are, that are guaranteed in this world: death, taxes, and the fact that Pennywise is going to put out the same record again. And this proved me wrong because I hated this one. I like the one with the second lead singer from Ignite way better than this one. This one sucks.
Yeah, it's funny that they went to like MySpace Records and had kind of a resurgence because I like the MySpace album. Dylan, what are your thoughts on the Fuse?
It starts pretty strong. I think the best song on the record is the opener, Knocked Down. Has that cool little guitar riff that doesn't sound very Pennywise-ish. Sounds more like a lot of the other Epitaph bands. But then they just kind of fall into that groove of, it's just rewriting the same song over and over again. Which, I mean, it's kind of fucked. A lot of bands get like shit on for changing up their sound with limited success, but Pennywise kind of gets shit on for, making the same record over and over again. People can't decide what they want. But yeah, it's pretty weak, man. If I had to call out one song that's like really bad, would probably be 18 Soldiers with that like gang vocal where they're like not all like singing in time, like it's all like disjointed. But I mean, there's a few decent songs like 6th Avenue Nightmare, Competition Song, but they're just not memorable at all. I mean, the whole album is kind of like you can throw it on as background noise and it's inoffensive, but it's not like About Time or Straight Ahead for me,
Yeah. All right. Well, Dylan, what is your next worst album by your favorite band gonna be?
Yeah, I mean, they're not really a favorite band. I would say like a top 25. Days Go By the Offspring. Which I mean, they got a few fair share of duds in their discography. I would say this is tied with a few other albums for me. But the thing that really puts it over the top as far as my least favorite is probably California Cruisin'. Bumping in my Cruising California, Bumping in My Trunk, which is just one of those like quirky, like Pretty Fly style like pop song things that they do. I don't know. I never really was into it. A lot of the other stuff on the album, there's the title song. A lot of people when it came out said it sounded like a Foo Fighters song, which I agree with. It just sounds like a shitty Foo Fighters song. And then a lot of the other stuff is just kind of like what we just talked about with Pennywise, just writing songs that are supposed to sound like Offspring songs, and they just aren't as good. Like Dividing by Zero, Slim Pickens, like they're okay, like musically, like they sound like Offspring songs, but it's just they're not. I'm not gonna put this shit on over like Smash or something. So just another very safe, unremarkable album with those weird Cruising California and OC Guns, just like those goofy songs that are kind of padding out the track list.
Yeah, I feel like I put this in the D tier and Offspring, but there's like those first 3 songs are all pretty good. I like Secrets from the Underground. I think the Dirty Magic re-recording is really good. But yeah, this is probably my bottom 2 or 3 Offspring albums. So don't disagree. Cruising California sucks. OC Gun sucks. I'm surprised to see Slim Pickens has the most plays of any song on here, considering it wasn't a single. That's surprising. But Lewis, what about you? Offspring, Days Go By.
I'll be honest, I think I've only listened to this album like one time, so not a super high opinion of it. I think I've been falling off the Offspring over the years. I liked a couple of the songs off of Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace, whatever, Splinter, those ones, they were okay. I was never a huge Offsprings fan to begin with, so I'll take your guys' word with it. I've seen diminishing returns on each album that comes out, so I have no doubt that this one's probably the worst.
And looking at the track list here, I mean, I'll say my biggest gripe with this and the most recent album is they got like 12 songs. One's a re-recording of an old song, which they did again with the newest album. They got the 2 like just complete like goofball filler songs, and then they got the shitty single. So I mean, there's probably 8 songs on here that should be like considered new Offspring songs. So it's really like they're just padding the track list with like bullshit.
Yeah, the latest one is even like worse. That took like
there's like
10 years and
7 new songs, I think.
Yeah, they had released like 2 of them in like 2015. There was a re-recording. The Offspring are like the Dead Island 2 of punk rock bands at this point.
Shameless.
All right, so Lewis, what's your next pick gonna be here?
I'll go with one that's probably a little bit cliche to pick, but I think it definitely deserves a spot. And I think it's kind of appropriate because it's kind of filling in this shit sandwich of a career almost. And and kind of like mirrors the other one. So my pick is going to be NoFX, Maximum Rock and Roll, or otherwise known as So What If We're on Mystic, which is easily the worst NoFX record. Like, I don't know anyone who would have ever heard this and would have assumed these guys would have become an amazing punk band, which they are. The middle of the half of their career is fantastic. I think you can't go wrong with anything, probably from Ribbed up till, I would say Coaster. I think even, and obviously little hiccups in between. My favorites though are Pump Up the Volume and that era mostly. But this one just jumped into mine immediately because I own this on vinyl. I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is their really early stuff. I hate this record. I would never listen to it again. And I think with a lot of the diminishing returns that they're coming out with a lot of their records now, it's just like, it's kind of like a mirror, right? It's like, and I really dislike Self-Entitled, and I think maybe that one's going to be on this list at some point. But yeah, this one is an easy pick for me. I hate this record. Avoid this one like the plague. So,
all right, yeah, I've got a NoFX one too. But before I get into it, Dylan, do you have any thoughts on Maximum Rock and Roll?
So, I mean, technically, this isn't an official studio album.
Oh, we're gonna get into that debate. Come on.
It's like an unauthorized release. Like Mystic took like a bunch of EPs and put this out.
They released those EPs, Dylan.
Yeah, I know, but to collect, they released this without the band's like input. Yeah. I think. So I mean, the songs do suck. I mean, there's a few like the songs themselves are okay, but the recording quality is just abysmal. Six Pack Girls, I would say, is like the standout, but the rest of it's just like goofy stuff, like the Iron Man cover and Cops and Donuts and stuff, like just like real like Drain Bramaged, just like just very very adolescent, like just bullshitting. So I would say, as far as official studio albums, Liberal Animation would be my least favorite, and that basically is like the same as this, like just real like hastily recorded on a budget. Yeah, I agree though. Overall, these are probably their worst collection of songs.
All right, well, I'm gonna lay it on NoFX too, and Lewis can testify to this. Probably for like 15 years, NoFX was my absolute favorite band. I was obsessed with NoFX for the longest time, but they have such a weird trajectory as a band. Like they formed in like 83. They were terrible until 1991. Like they had the 8 years of being like pretty unexceptional band. And now look at the tail end of this band. I think it's going to be even longer than 8 years where they're like, in my opinion, maybe even worse, just because there's no excuse to be this bad anymore. I'm going to talk about what I consider the real turning point. I apologize for getting everybody dizzy here. Okay, so War and Errorism comes out. For me, it's a little bit of a step down. It comes out in 2003. I like Pump Up the Volume significantly better. Then we get Wolves and Wolves Clothing, which is kind of like a mix of rehash 7-inch songs, a handful of like songs that could have been B-sides from War and Errorism, but it's still listenable. It's still a decent album. Then we get Coaster, which at the time I didn't like it, but it grew on me over time. The more I listened, the more I appreciated the songs. And it's one of the ones I listen to most nowadays. Then we move on here. Self-Entitled from 2012. To me, this is the band just bottoming out, and they've been kind of dragging the carcass of that car for like across the country now. Like, but this is the point now. 72 Hookers, Believe in Goddess, She Didn't Lose Her Baby. These are terrible songs that no band should be writing, let alone a band that was around for 30 years when this came out. I think the only saving grace on this album is Sellout. And it's just because it's sandwiched within 2 slices of the moldiest bread you've ever seen. So like the middle is just something edible. Other than that, man, this is horrible, deplorable release by one of my favorite bands. I completely fell off the NoFX fandom after this. So I don't think there's any turning back from here. I think everything they put out since this is also bad, borderline unlistenable, but Dylan, self-entitled. I know I went into it pretty hard, but do you have anything redeeming to say about it, or do you agree with me?
I think it's all right, man. I don't think it's that bad. Definitely the stuff after this was worse. I would say this is the best of the post-coaster releases they've had. The songs aren't great, but they're not horrible. I would say the most confusing thing about it is Xmas Has Been X, because I mean this album didn't come out anytime around Christmas or anything. So I don't know why they pulled like a brain drain Ramones, just putting a completely unrelated Christmas song on the album.
Yeah, it was a 7-inch, right?
There was an EP release.
Yeah, there was a 7-inch with that and New Year's Revolution.
Yeah, it really does make no sense to throw it on here.
I think the worst song surrounding this album was a B-side from the well, no, it wasn't a B-side. It was on the 7-inch they did before the album with the She Didn't Lose Her Baby was on the B-side. But the B-side song was My Stepdad's a Cop and My Stepmom's a Dumb. That was the worst song like recorded at this time, I feel like. And I guess they had some good judgment not to put that on the album.
Yeah. All right, Lewis, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I hate this album too. I mean, 72 Hookers is like the worst opening song ever. Like, it is so dumb and juvenile and not clever. Like, I don't know if they're trying to be clever. Like, it just sucks. And the album goes down from here. And I think my least favorite, and I agree, Sellout's probably the best song on here. But I think the thing that upsets me about this is that I love the song We Got Too Jealous Again, right? Yes. I love that song.
Yeah, it's a pretty good song.
And then he has to bring his stupid, social, terrible divorce into this and ruin the legacy of that song and make the companion song to this, which sucks ass. Like, now I have to think about this terrible song whenever I hear that awesome song. Yeah, this album's terrible. I didn't like anything after this. I actually think First Ditch Effort is an improvement over this album.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I agree.
Yeah, but this is really bad. And I didn't like Single Album really either. I wonder, though, Dylan, and it seems like a lot of younger people seem to give NoFX a lot more leeway than we do, and you're just slightly younger. I'm always curious, like, why some people would even consider this album listenable. Like, I wanted to throw this away.
Well, musically, it's, like, pretty, like, standard NoFX fare, I feel like. But, I mean, like, the subject matter of the songs is all kind of like bullshit. Like, My Sycophant Others and This Machine Is For. And so, like, it's just, like, pretty, like, nonsense songwriting. But it sounds like 90s NoFX as far as, like, the pacing of the...
I don't know.
It's all fast songs. Like, this is probably their fastest album since the 2000s, I feel like.
Like, I mean, I don't like Louise, right? Really? Like, off of, like, Pump Up the Volume, right? Because of, like, the dumb lyrics and stuff. Like, I don't know how you feel about that, John, but, like, that even still feels different than this, you know?
For me, like, even the production of these albums, it just, there's nothing appealing about this. Like, and to what you were saying with the younger generation, like, we were kind of fans where NoFX was, like, riding the wave. They were, like, the biggest punk band in the world, you know? Like, and we were there for when Pump Up the Volume and War and Errors, and we were getting these on, like, release day, and it was like, holy shit, you know, it keeps sounding good. And then we were there again. Dylan, you were probably, this is 2012, but when this came out, it's just like a punch to the nuts followed by a punch to the gut. You know, it's just like, what is this? This was my favorite band, and this is how far they've fallen. It's like riding that wave, and now you're like, you got a mouthful of sand after this thing. It's just, there's no coming back. So, but
you can only write so many good songs, man. Every dog has its day.
I will say,
to retire.
As far as the One Jealous, I think the concept of One Jealous again is clever. The execution is piss poor, but I like the song name. I like the concept behind it, but it needed work. But we'll move on. We've been shitting on this for like 10 minutes now. But we could have done a whole video on Self-Entitled. But Dylan, what is your final one here?
All right, my last one is definitely one of my top 3 favorite bands MXPX before, everything, and after. Yeah, we touched on this briefly in that like most anticipated of the year because MXPX has a new album coming out. Let me. I'm going straight for the jugular here. I'm surprised the song doesn't have more plays on here than it does because I think it was a single or like a point of focus for this album. Kings of Hollywood, by far the single worst MXPX song. I hate that like shitty little guitar riff. That I don't know what the hell was going on with that. I will say best song on the album is Everything Sucks When You're Gone. I think they made a music video for that too. That was kind of fun. But it's just like really whiny. The whole album, like it's just not this and Let's Rock, which I think was like B-sides from this album. I could be wrong. Just have a very distinct sound from anything else in MXPX discography. Is this like whiny, like early 2000s pop punk, like trying to really hard to be Blink-182, like songs like Broken Hearted and stuff like that. I mean, it's just very, very cheesy, like not MXPX to me.
Yeah, I got into this a little in the MXPX tier list, but I don't hate this album. I know it's a very polarizing one, but I think Play It Loud, and I said this in the video, they shaved off a minute. It would be solid. Well Adjusted is a pretty good song. Let me see. There's some gems on it. The Capital, I think, is the best song on here. That's the one I listen to most. But,
Don't Walk Away is the best of like the corny songs. I think.
I don't like. See, Don't Walk Away is probably one of my least favorite. For me, You're Not Alone would be.
Yeah, that's all right too.
It's got some speed to it at least. But yeah, I think I put this in B or C tier. I don't hate this one. Lewis, I know you're not the biggest MXPX fan. Anything at all to say, or do you want to just get straight into yours?
No, I mean, you know me. I mean, MXPX was just a band that just always existed and just never clicked for me. Very non-controversial. I'm sure I could be walking around a PacSun listening to this and I would love it. So,
all right, what is going to be the last victim for you?
All right, so my last pick is going to be very similar to the reasons I think we just kind of talked about with Nofx and like the latter half of a career really going downhill. It's going to be Guttermouth's Eat Your Face. So in no way was Guttermouth ever as big a band as NoFX, but you know, I think prior to this, like for a certain subset of the punks in the genre, they were a really fun band. They were kind of like the punkest guys at the party band because they didn't really play into any of the other tropes that were going on, like caring about politics or doing anything else. They were just kind of like party punk. And I feel people thought Gusto was a pretty big downstep, but I kind of like Gusto, and I think you like it too, John. I mean, it's obviously a lot different, but it was good. This album there's just nothing redeeming about it. It's low quality. It feels like they just went into the studio and just shit out a bunch of songs. And it will forever stick with me because I believe Party of Two is the song in which that you mocked to Mark's face and made him feel bad about his band. And I love that. And I treasure that memory. Mark
was probably so fucking coked up he didn't remember that shit like 30 seconds after whatever you said.
I don't even know if we told the story on here, but they were they were talking to John and they asked us some stupid trivia question where the answer was Spock from Star Trek or whatever, right? It was some stupid question. And then John said something about keep your politics. He's like, I don't want to hear about these political bands. I'm over it. He was in a bad mood or something. And Mark starts talking to John about the importance of politics and music. And John goes, you are the man who wrote Party of Two, and you want to tell me about political music? Get serious or something. And he looked so upset.
Dude, okay, this was at in Montreal, Amnesia Rock Fest 2014. And that was like, I was just done at that point. And Mark had come up to me. He was with the Daily Woo, the podcast on YouTube.
Oh yeah, Adam was in Guttermouth for a little bit, along with like everyone else on the face of the planet.
So he comes up to me. He started shit talking me because I was wearing a Nofx hat. That's how this whole thing started. And he just like starts like talking shit to me, and we're sitting down, and then eventually we're doing like the interview. And then, yeah, he's like, the importance of politics, like Lewis said. And I'm like, dude, your song is like, go choke your chicken. It's finger like it's the stupidest song. I love Guttermouth. But this, like Lewis said, this is like that point where it's just like, off a cliff. I didn't care that Gusto was like a little poppy. I thought there was some like novelty to the songs. I thought they were catchy. I think Scholarship and Punk gets stuck in your head. Campfire Girl gets stuck in my head. Contribution, right? There's some bangers on there. This is just unremarkable, boring. This could have been a high school band's first record. It's just remedial. The first two songs sound a lot alike. I think maybe in the riff is the guitar pattern is extremely similar. Yeah, just nothing good to say about it. Wasn't a big fan of Mark when I met him. Dylan, I know you like Guttermouth. What are your thoughts on this one?
I don't have a lot of thoughts on the album. I do want to say I have a Guttermouth story too. My uncle, so when I was doing concert photography for Dying Scene, I did a Guttermouth show. And my uncle and I hung out with the band before the show, because one of the conditions of me getting on the guest list was that I took press or like promo photos for the band for them to use for like their flyers and stuff. And those photos still exist on their like Facebook page. I've seen them used in recent times. So yeah, they took us to a sake bar, and Mark got my uncle like really drunk on sake before the show even started. And my uncle just spent like an hour just talking to Mark about how much he was into Guttermouth in high school and shit. And I don't think Mark like really fucking cared. He just wanted to drink sake. And I played Pac-Man at the sake bar.
Well, just I don't know. Maybe Mark is a nice guy, but just I was
very insincere. Like he's always just like fucking around, man. I don't think he. Like, don't take anything seriously from that guy.
This event, like I was stone cold sober, right? Lewis, I think you drank 30 beers that day. It was really impressive, but I was the driver, and we took my 3 younger cousins. So I was stone cold sober, and Mark was shithoused, right? And he's coming up to me, this like 45-year-old man talking shit about my band shirt. I wasn't in the mood. Sometimes I get...
You can't take it seriously, man. Everyone's a target.
Sometimes I get cranky. I was very cranky that day. I was done. It was 7-8 hours in the sun. I feel like Lewis, we couldn't get back in because we left, or I don't know. I remember I was in a bad mood.
We went out because I was drinking Tall Boys out at that deli, and I wanted to buy Canadian cigarettes, and everyone got mad at me because I kept calling them loonies. But yeah, it was a whole series of events.
Listen, man, if you bought Mark a beer, he would have been cool. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
the last thing I want to say though. Oh no, sorry.
It could have been a whole nother episode. That concert, all the freaking shit that happened there. But yeah, Lewis, what do you got before I get into my last pick?
Yeah, the last thing I would say is the one thing that shocks me is that this came out on Epitaph, right? It seems like such a low quality record that they would have released. Like that's the thing that's especially shocking to me, especially around this time though, because it's still when Epitaph was still like putting out relevant records. But the last thing about that story that I just loved and puts a nice bow on everything is he walks away, and I was like, man, John, you were real hard on him there. And John just looks at me, and he's still pissed off. He's like, he goes, I guess don't meet your heroes or something. It was so funny. And I think about it all the time.
If Mark Adkins is one of your heroes, then shit, man.
Our idols or something.
Yeah,
I was drunk, but it was so good, man. It was like the best ending. We had a good laugh about it, and then John was happy again. So it was a good thing. This album sucks.
I would be disappointed if Mark wasn't a dick to somebody.
It's true.
It's true. What do you dick? He wasn't a dick, really. He was actually kind of nice, and John was the dick. That's part.
Oh my god! It's just, I know it. I sometimes like. I feel bad about that sometimes, but I was just in a mood. We all get in moods sometimes. I was in a mood. But I'm going to get into my last album here. We're over.
Oh yeah.
We're over 30 minutes. Speaking of getting me in a bad mood.
Oh man.
I know Dylan likes this. This is the Flatliners, Inviting Light. And just a little backstory here. Lewis can attest to this. We were into the Flatliners from the very beginning. Like we all had this album before they signed to Fat Wreck, the original album, Destroyed to Create. I loved everything they did up to this point. I had Dead Language was in my top 20 albums of all time. I know people think that's a hot take. I had it on Off the Radar. I feel like people don't talk about it enough as a great rock album. So when this came out, I distinctly remember this, that I had pre-ordered it. It was late, but I wanted to listen to the physical copy. I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. My wife and I drove to the store, bought the actual CD for this because I was so excited. And then we drove all the way to this place, Voodoo Donuts, which was like 25 minutes from us, because I wanted to listen to the whole thing. And I remember just being in the car and I just kept saying out loud, like, this can't be it. This can't be the new Flatliners album. And we would get like 2.5, 3 minutes into every song and I would skip. I'd be like, all right, it's going to get better. There's going to be that rockin' song. Skip, skip, skip. Thing gets to the end and I restarted. I was like, hold on. I might just be like missing something. Skip, skip, skip. Nothing. There is absolutely zero redeemable qualities for this piece of shit album. I know Dylan's going to have some counterpoints. I think this is one of the most disappointing moments I've ever had as a fan of punk rock was the day that I put this album on. And I sometimes, like, I'll go back 6 months later. Let me revisit that. It's the Flatliners. This can't be it. I've listened to this probably 20 times. There is not a single song I have pinned. There is not a single song I think is memorable. There's not a single song I'd want to hear live. I think this is an album that they will be playing in Starbucks. They'll be playing in coffee shops across the world. Like somewhere in Portland, somebody's blasting this album. It is just not for me. I think they came back a little bit with New Ruin. But overall, I don't think the Flatliners ever truly come back for me. So, Dylan, let me hear your counterpoint. So you mentioned you like this some point. So I really wanted to hit on this because it's probably my most disappointing moment as a punk rock fan.
Well, hey, listen, man. I don't like this album that much. It took me a few years to come around on it. You got to be in the right mindset. You just kind of want to chill.
No.
Put on some relaxing kind of alt rock kind of shit. Hang My Head is definitely the standout track on this album. I feel like I mean, come on, you gotta like that song at least. That's a pretty good song. You got Chris shouting, pretty exciting stuff. I will say, I mean, Flatliners fans fall into two camps. There's the ones who are still holding out hope that they'll start like making ska songs again. And then there's the other ones who are stopped huffing the copium and just accepted the fact that this band sounds different now.
I'm neither of those, man. I said that Dead Language is my favorite one. So
okay, well,
I'm willing to accept some change, but I will not accept terrible albums. That's where I draw the line.
Hey,
I don't care if you evolve your sound. By all means, that's fine. But don't feed me this bullshit. And like, I don't listen to Flatliners for alt rock. You know, like,
hey, listen.
They should have.
I like it. It's pretty easy listen. I like the album, man. It's not my favorite, but I don't like vehemently oppose its existence.
That's
and I do think that New Ruin is a step in the right direction back from this.
All right, Lewis, you and I have never talked about this album. I don't like to bring it up because, as you could see, it's getting me in a bad place. But what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, I'm probably in that camp of the people who would love they go back to the original sound a little bit more, because I think pretty much everything since the first album, Destroy to Create's kind of been, I mean, good. Like, I mean, I like them. Don't get me wrong, and I like Dead Language, and I like those albums, but it never quite captured the same energy. Just a totally different type of band to me. So I would prefer to go back to that. I don't like this album either. So this one I think is particularly egregious in that new sound and was very unpopular when I first listened to it. And I would probably not go back and listen to it again. So I would say if you're, I don't know. I think we hit the two major recommendations. Destroy to Create and Dead Languages are probably the two best records to listen to of the Flatliners, and avoid this one.
Play Fred's Got Slacks.
So Dylan, because you're more dialed in than both Lewis and I. the story of this being on Rise Records, did Fat Mike veto this or did they just move on their own? I've always been curious about that.
I had no clue, but I mean, listen, man, I know I have the contrarian opinion here.
Mm-hmm.
This is a generally disliked album. I mean, I don't know what the story is behind it. Fat doesn't, I mean, they were on Fat for their first few records. I think they're second through Dead Language, The Great Awake through Dead Language. So I don't know why. I mean, there was a few bands that like Less Than Jake and stuff around this time were jumping ship to Rise Records. So I don't know if they were just handing out like some lucrative,
too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they were just handing out some lucrative deals on a single record or what the deal was, but I'm sure Fat Records would have put this out if they were given the opportunity, because New Ruin is mostly in the same vein as this album for the most part.
All right. Well,
is New Ruin back on Fat Wreck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
I was gonna compliment Fat Mike as not putting this out being the only good decision he's made in the last 15 years, but I'll revoke that comment that I had in my head, that compliment. So that's gonna do it, guys. I hope you liked us getting nasty a little bit. Sometimes it's exhausting to be nice and talk up records you don't like all the time, but that's part of the game. Being in the scene, we like to support bands, but also we like to be realists. So I want this to be a series. I've got about 12 albums on this list that I picked out that I hate. So hopefully the guys can come up with a few more too. Lewis, any closing thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think I can come up with a few albums, and you know my feeling on this. I think it'd be pretty fun if we did songs too.
Yes, yeah.
So because that'll give us a lot.
Them.
Well, no, but we could pick the worst songs from different albums, right? So because not always an album's bad, yeah. So we can get a little broad there, but yeah, I think it's a shame because I like all of the bands that I mentioned here, and these are just albums that I hate. So yeah.
All right, Dylan, what about you? Would you be down for round number 2?
Of course, and I want to say to the people, anyone who's still watching, if you disagree with anything I said, you're wrong and I'm right.
As always, that's a great mindset to have. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, helps out the channel, and we will see you next time.